Good afternoon. Dear listeners, welcome to Šiaulių bankas meeting with investors. I'm Emilia from Nasdaq Vilnius and I'll be moderating today's event. We will start with a presentation from the management, which will be followed by the Q&A session. Please be informed that this webinar is being recorded and will be available for a rewatch. As always, I encourage every one of you to share your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and you can submit them either anonymously or with your name. Please note that the questions received in advance will be covered during the presentation, and thus, if there is a need for additional elaboration, please specify the question in the Q&A box of your screen. With that said, I'm pleased to introduce today's presenters, CEO Vytautas Sinius, CFO Donatas Savickas, and Head of Treasury and Markets Tomas Varenbergas. Dear guests, please, the floor is yours and good luck.
Good afternoon, dear investors. Pleasure having you here in Šiaulių bankas webinar. It's an interim webinar between our quarterly reviews of the bank group financials, since we have several new topics to be informed for you. We would like to start with several topics like retail business merger information and also recently issued MREL bonds. So I will lead through the first topic, and colleagues will join later, continuing with the rest of the presentation. So yeah, thank you for your time, and we're happy to provide information on those two topics. So retail business merger, the topic that is currently important in Šiaulių bankas development. We'll talk about the strategic direction amendments of Šiaulių bankas group. So firstly, just to give a bit more context for these transactions. So we can change the slide. Historically, Šiaulių bankas has been developing through organic growth and also mergers and acquisitions, but mainly our focus was built around the financing products. So we treat ourselves as a leader in financing solutions for both business-to-business clients and business-to consumers, to private individuals. And I would say that we achieved very good progress in this field. I'm happy that we built during the last decades this strong sustainable business model with a clear focus on the lending products. Despite that, we were providing retail services to the clients as well, with branch network and the products that we have. However, we see today's momentum as an opportunity for the bank to grow more intensively and to be more focused on the retail business as well. It doesn't mean that we are losing somehow focus on the other part of the activities that we've been strong at. Nevertheless, we think that it's an opportunity to expand business model of Šiaulių bankas and to have an additional focus to the retail services. And answering question, why retail? I can highlight several keynotes that I think important for us, showing that we've been already in this path for quite a long, but the momentum is good to reinforce ourselves and to provide more value to the retail clients in Lithuania. So firstly, we have the largest branch network, which is up to date, fully functioning. 4 regions covered at 37 cities and towns in Lithuania. So one of the key elements important for branch for the retail business is a branch network. Also call center, well developed, very professional working call center, which is also strong element in the servicing private and corporate clients. A recently renewed internet bank and application, one of the components in the omni-channel service provision to the clients. During the years, we have built quite substantial client base, both as a bank and also as our subsidiaries, which were potentially could cross-sell much more and upsell much more than we are doing now. So that's another opportunity and ability to expand on the already current fields. The other part is retail products. So we have developed a number of different retail products, starting from daily banking, of course, financing products, and savings products. So all those products that are needed for retail are developed. Of course, we need to continue to upgrade them and to add additional features, but the product range is quite well developed in our bank. What is another key element in my understanding for great service in retail banking is the culture of good quality in service provision to the both private and corporate clients, the proximity to the client. So that's our DNA. We have a number of years leading the client satisfaction parameters, ratios, and I'm happy that we year by year keeping the high level of client service. So that would be another cornerstone for our retail journey to be developed. Another thing is the constant investments into the retail business as such. That comes from the both client needs and from regulation, whether it's a risk management or compliance. So the current banking activities could not be imagined without investments into the product development, into the IT infrastructure. So we do all that, and nevertheless we are focused on not to the retail. We need to do that in any way. So we would like to, get a better return on all the investments that we do in the retail field. And another possible outcome out of this focus is the ability for us to receive much more diversified income. Just to remind that very broadly saying about 80% of Šiaulių bankas income is generated from interest income, and the other part is less capital intense income. Therefore, I think that would be the very good step moving forward to the better diversified income structure and less capital intense activities. So the strategic development is really today's topic that we are working on. So we can give just a high level direction or thoughts that we are having now. And we are now working hard on the both integration of a recent transaction as well as the strategy development. But looking historically, our mission and vision has worked successfully. Our focus to financing solution, I would say, has paid off, and we've reached substantial results in this field. And as I mentioned, what was very important to have a sustainable recurring income generation. And now we're at the momentum that when we can expand and use the current strength of Šiaulių bankas for the further development, and particularly in a retail field. So our working strategic ambition to be at the top 3 banks for the choice for Lithuanian people to use us as a bank. And I think we have all opportunities to be listed in the top position as a main bank for private individual needs. And as I mentioned already before, we will continue to have strong business financing arm which has long-term proof of concept, how we work with business clients, how we can compete with other players in this field. And I believe that we have all the chances to continue in that direction as strong as we were, and even to continue finding new clients, bigger clients for financing solutions on the business side. And as the other pillarstone, it would be the retail banking that would be covered by all three main needs of a private individuals. So daily banking as a core of active usage of financial services. Then the financing solutions, mainly that would be consumer financing, credit cards, mortgages, renovation. So that field is pretty well expressed in Šiaulių bankas and could be, one of the strong parts in retail banking. And last but not least is the savings and investments. So part of the services we historically used to have, mainly that was a different type of deposits. And currently with a recently announced transaction, we believe that we will cover all needs of the retail clients that would be expressed with a savings and investment block in the retail organization. And meanwhile, for this year, for the 2023, we are focusing on the 4 cornerstones in our current strategy. So we are investing already in the retail banking setup, how to reinforce and boost the business in a retail. So the initial works has been starting, and as well as I mentioned, the integration process with Invel team is starting. Therefore, that would be also strongly influenced by this integration, the retail block. The other part of the priority direction is the financing. So we're not losing this area of our competence and competitive advantage, and we will continue to expand that and also use those products as well as the opening products for provision of retail services to their clients as well. Digitalization is another area of the focus, where continue modernization of the bank, and without digital solutions, both that's important for the clients and also important internally as the digitalized processes is the key in the future bank's development. And the last cornerstone is governance, which is important for us as a systemic institution to comply with the regulation, whatever it comes from different type of fields. And I think we've made a very, very good progress in the last several years in that field, being directly supervised by ECB. Definitely to this part will be also covered with the ESG strategy. And already we are making good progress in that field. Just recently, as example, we've launched the new green mortgage to the private individuals. So in the coming years, we'll follow with the other solutions in an ESG field. So with that, I will pass word to colleagues to continue with the transaction that we have signed recently and to describe in more details.
Thank you, Vytautas. Hello, everyone. The strategy side was well covered, and so let's turn to the transaction itself and how does it support the whole shift to the retail business. So first of all, let's look to the business which is being acquired from Invalda and how does it fits to the Šiaulių bankas group structure. So there is 2 arms. The first one is the asset management, and that's a new field for the group, as the bank do not have such business at the moment, and there will be a need to establish a new company which should be licensed by the regulator, and that is one of the key moment when we speak about the closing of the transaction why it's set on the Q4 of 2023. So we need to go through all the process in order to get license and to be able to run the asset management business. What comes with caption of asset management? So there are two products, key products. So it's the second and the third pillar pension funds. The market share is pretty substantial, and INVL currently is the largest non-banking player in pension product market. Together with pension products, mutual funds business is also part of the transaction. So, and it will be managed under our asset management arm. On the second arm, we have life insurance. So currently, the bank has subsidiary which runs this business line, and we have 3% of the market share. That's not a substantial part of the total market, but with the transaction, we get another 4%, and we say that actually will form a player with 10% market share that could grow aggressively in life insurance market. It's important to mention that the Lithuanian business, we are getting Latvian and Estonian business operations. Looking strategically, Lithuania is a key market for the bank at the moment, and the Latvian and Estonian will be decided going on, and we see that it's low probability that the bank will choose organic growth in these markets. So looking to the whole transaction perimeter, we see that the bank gets 230,000+ clients. Together merged with banks, which is 350,000+ clients, we get 500,000 client base, which puts us at a good position to grow retail business, to cross-sell, upsell the clients, and to develop and create value for the shareholders. When talking about our clients, worth to mention that there is only a small part of overlapping clients, because bank's current client base is slightly older and then compared to the INVL client base. So that puts, again, that's a good match, and that puts the bank in a good position to serve wide client base in the retail business segment, and to utilize all the sales possibilities going forward. On asset management side, so assets under management side, so the bank gets 1 billion euros assets. Worth to mention that even during 2022, a very volatile year, the assets are being kept increasing. So that puts a message that the business is pretty stable and sticky, and even in very volatile environment, it generates pretty same revenue, top line revenue numbers. And when you look to the top line, so we are speaking about 15 million plus euros annual revenue. So as already Vytautas mentioned, actually that's a key consideration when we are looking to the current structure of bank's revenue, top line revenue split. Together with the business, it's very important that the bank's group is being merged with INVL team. That's very important because INVL developed asset management business from zero, and we have very good knowledge on the retail business and how to develop, and as being non-banking institution, they gained a very substantial market share. And by merging that team to the banks, so we get a good match between the current team, which is good experts on the financing. So together with the retail business, we see that we are standing on a strong two legs in order to develop business going forward. So the total value of the business to be acquired and merged to the group is 40 million euros. Involved will be paid by shares, not in cash. It's important also moment to emphasize that Invalda is getting shares, and Invalda wants to be part of a further bank's development story, and that when we put the retail business into the group structure, their attitude is that this transaction will create value for all the stakeholders going forward. The value of transaction was valuation was performed by the Ernst & Young on the business that are being acquired and the currency, as we call, which is being paid as a bank's shares to be involved. It's important to say that the transaction is being treated as transaction between the related parties. So that was a key thing to find what is the fair value that the bank would pay only for the business which is being acquired and for nothing else. So that task was solved by the Ernst & Young, and that's the numbers that were received, and that's why management sees that are in the fair value range. And yeah, and when we see when we look to the bank's valuation, so it's also important to say that we are talking about valuation of 1 to price book level, close to 1 price to book level, and at the date when the transaction was announced, that was the stock price was transaction stock price was higher than the market price at that moment in the market. Yeah, let's jump further. So consideration on the transaction impact for the group. So from the strategy side, so it seems that it was already discussed by Vytautas that the bank has a goal to shift to the retail banking business, and with the transaction itself, we see that it supports this goal, and it puts the bank on stronger position when we speak about the daily economy, because the bank actually becomes a universal bank which could compete for the top 3 position in the market with the largest Scandinavian players. From profitability side, we touched a little bit the diversification moment. Looking on the bottom line, so we see that the synergies will be unlocked in 2024 and going forward. The 2023 is a year when we need to work on closing the transaction. So the first year operating in the joint structure will be 2024, and we assume that during the first year in the joint group we will not be able to unlock everything which is seen and is planned as a joint organization. So the full synergies impact we assess will be in the 2025. And we have actually run another scenario as the bank looks at the shift to the retail banking has its reasons behind it. So we run the scenario, alternative scenario in case what would be the impact on return on equity in case the bank could choose the organic growth. And that's a big difference. And we see that by making the transaction and the growing client base, the bank is at a stronger position to compete in the market, to compete in the retail banking business, and to deliver return for the shareholders in closer years rather than later ones. On capital side, so according to our initial assessment, we see that one-time negative impact will be on capital adequacy ratio, and we're assessing up to 50 basis points of effect, negative effect. Capital position actually will be mainly affected by the increased risk-weighted assets, because investments into a subsidiaries will increase. Good thing is that that the transaction is being performed by settling it in shares. Otherwise, if the transaction would be in the cash, so there would be much more higher pressure on the bank's capital. It's important to emphasize that the transaction itself doesn't impact the bank's plans for profit distribution with the shareholders, and that doesn't impact the bank's dividend policy, what is in the dividend policy and what will be considered by the management in the coming months till the AGM. On the risk side, I already mentioned that it's very important to emphasize that the transaction is on the fair value. All the due diligence processes were performed also by the external parties. The agreement also is on the best practice terms. And as we communicated in public announcements, that there could be some price adjustments. So during the due diligence process, there are some findings, and Invalda should fix that in case it won't be done. So the final price will be adjusted, and all the findings will be fixed already on the bank side. Yeah, a little bit touched the timeline. So the last milestone or the closing of transaction is set for Q4 next year. Important message is that EGM is being planned in Q1 in February. The specific date is not set yet, but we're working on having it in February and having the AGM, annual general meeting, as always, at the end of March. Meanwhile, to the closing of transaction, the key milestones are getting the license to run the asset management business and to get approval to run life insurance business in Latvia and Estonia. What is worth to mention that till the closing of the transaction, actually we are in process to kick off the integration process, and our goal is from the first day after the closing to serve the clients with the new product offering, with all the sales teams in place, and not to waste the time for integration after the closing. So all this preparation works already kicking off, and we are actually kind of having strong attitude in order to be ready to run business from the day one after the closing. Yeah, so very important thing is to touch the shareholder structure, and the bank going forward will actually focus not on the current shareholder structure, but will try to estimate what will be the structure by taking into account all the publicly announced transactions. So I mean the EBRD transaction that was publicly announced in December last year, and the transaction that we are talking today on the retail business merger. So By taking into account these transactions, we'll have Invalda as a key shareholder with up to 20% of stake. It's good that the bank will have a leading shareholder, which could drive the bank and to work closely with the management on strategic direction. It's good that the majority of shareholders again will be made off with Lithuanian companies and private individuals, and by having good business presence in Lithuania with a strong support of Lithuanian shareholder, we see that it's a good match to be a competitive universal bank in the market going forward. So that's all on the transaction. We will come back to discuss the questions, but meanwhile, let's touch another topic in our agenda. So that's a moral bond issue, and was another important transaction for the bank. And we'll ask Donatas to step in and to give some insight on that.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear investors. Using the opportunity that we are meeting today to provide additional comments on the transaction that Vytautas and Tomas just recently commented, we also want to share the news about some details about bonds issue. In the very end of November, the bank has successfully placed an additional 85 million euros 4-year senior preferred bonds that are meeting MREL requirements. This issue was made in the very, unstable and volatile circumstances, and we are happy that we managed to do this in the good terms. And the spread by the type of investors and by countries also meet our expectations. So we attract more not only Baltic investors, but also some financial institutions from UK, from Finland. And with this issue, we almost met the binding requirements that will be valid from the beginning of 2024. So that means that in the next year, so amount of MREL eligible bonds, if any, will be significantly less, and it will be easy to meet these binding requirements that are coming. That's very short comments from our side. You see the details and terms, so we will come to the market when we will see that we need and the situation is favorable for that. So thank you, and I leave floor for Q&A session.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and now we will proceed with the Q&A session. So please, all attendees, feel free to send in your questions in the Q&A box of your screen, and you can send them in anonymously too. So let's begin, and the first question would be, could you please indicate what kind of net profit INVL Life can reasonably earn on its CA 10 million euro revenue? Thank you.
Good. I'll take this question then. Yeah, that's the in a perimeter of a transaction that we will merge two live businesses into one. So Šiaulių bankas currently has SB Draudimas, and INVL Life business will be merged. So the firstly, I would say this is the opportunity to extract synergies out of this transaction. So the two companies will be merged into one. So there's some cost saving elements in there. But more critical thing is ability to reduce client acquisition costs, which in the live business are high, and fully using our branch network and our salespeople ability to actively work with retail clients, we assume that that would be the main profit driver element in this transaction, talking about life insurance products. And in our estimations, those client acquisition costs could be, in a long term, come up to 5 million euros per year. There's another additional synergy from the cross-sell to those clients. So that's an additional, so that actually the three elements: synergies in the cost, the client acquisition cost, and the synergies on the client base. So just to say directly to the question, I could not provide this answer, but the general estimation, the ones that I've mentioned.
Thank you very much. Would you be able to share the EY valuation memo with your shareholders?
Yeah, so very good question. So actually the bank seeks to perform transaction on the best practice, and we are working on providing the summary of valuation report for the EGM in order to have a full picture for the shareholders for their decision on the transaction.
Thank you. What are the measurable KPIs for Šiaulių bankas growth as a retail bank? Do you have a target market share? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question as well. So yeah, as I mentioned, we are working on that field, and the more expressed and more clear targets will be developed shortly during this strategy building and also integration process. But as we can see, so we are able to grow quite intensively the active client number. So that will be one of the KPIs we will follow. So active retail clients. The other one would be the product penetration. Currently, we have that pretty low, and we see opportunity of growing the product penetration with expanded palette of retail products. And with this merger, we see the, as I mentioned, perfect opportunity to become the top 3 player in the market. So that's our initial target. So to see how we can step into the top 3 position, and to expand our active client base and also higher product penetration as we have now.
Thank you very much. Could you please expand on what is left in Valda after this transaction? Why not just buy the whole thing? Thank you.
Yes, so actually Invalda has 2 arms of a business. So the retail one and the private equity. So the retail business is being acquired and merged to the Šiaulių bankas group. And the Invalda going forward will run the private equity business. So that's the business that Invalda started 30 years ago and is keen and seeks to run going forward. Actually, and that explains why Šiaulių bankas needs to get a new car and to get it licensed, because Invalda keeps the current license in order to run the asset management business as it is needed while having the private equity arm under their own group.
Thank you for your answer. What is the value of the asset management business versus the insurance business?
Yeah, on this stage, I would say that we can look to the assets under management amount, and the split in that number more or less represents the value of the business which are being acquired.
Thank you very much. As I see that we have the last question remaining, Dear attendees, please write your questions in the Q&A box if you have some. So the next question is INVL stake in Moldova Agro in Bank also part of transaction? If yes, can you please comment the general view about that investment? Thank you.
No, this Moldova Agrobank, this is not part of a transaction that we have made with Invalda recently on the Baltic business. However, that shows Invalda's understanding of banking business and being investors into the other country. That's an opportunity to share the know-how of the different countries, banks' business models. And I see that as an opportunity to share the knowledges between the different countries and to expand the businesses locally.
Thank you very much. Once the M&A is closed, how long will it take to Šiaulių bankas to integrate the target companies?
Yeah, good question. As we see from today's perspective, we consider that we structuring our integration process the way that we will act as the merged team and merged businesses from the day one of closing of this transaction. At least we're building this ambition in our integration process. Of course, we will see how it goes, and if anything left to be done after the closing, it will be done later. But as of now, we see that most of the questions we can answer before the closing date.
Thank you very much. And it seems that we have the last question for today, unless some more come in. So the question would be, what are normalized costs related to the 15 million revenue?
Yeah, so as already mentioned that we are speaking about up to 5 million bottom line on net profit, which puts by taking into account all the costs under normalized calculation.
Thank you. It seems that another question came in. Why such a rush with MREL bond issuance when there is 1 year left to meet MREL requirements? Thank you.
Yes, very good question. So actually, nevertheless, the target are set for 2024. There are intermediary targets that should be also met by the bank. And the next intermediate target is the 1st of January of 2023. So we had to go to the market and to raise some eligible liabilities in order to be in line with intermediary targets. But yes, the final one is 2024, 1st of January, and going forward from that day, each day the bank will need to be in line with the MREL target.
Thank you very much for your answers. As all the questions are answered on behalf of Šiaulių bankas and Nasdaq Vilnius, thank you everyone for joining us today. Dear management, thank you very much for the presentation and the Q&A session. Have a good evening, everyone, and goodbye.